Hello, you may not know my name. My name is Brian Crombie. I've been involved in politics and Mississauga society for 24 years, but usually not at the front, usually in behind. I was chairman of something called the Mississauga City Summit for 7 years. Mayor Hazel McCallion, former mayor, asked me to chair that summit. I did it with a great deal of pride. Several people on here were involved in that summit. I think it was a real game changer for Mississauga. I was president of the Mississauga Arts Council. I was on the board for 7 years and president for 2 years. Nightly, you may hear me, if some of you are lucky enough, I'm on Saga 960 every night at 6 o'clock. And I've interviewed over 1,500 people, both Toronto, Mississauga, and federally about what some of the issues are. So you may not know my name, but I have been involved, and I've been very, I think, involved. But I got to tell you, I've lived here in Mississauga for the last 24 years. Let's be candid. I think we have got some major problems, some major crises, and we're not admitting them. I think we have an affordability crisis that is key. You take a look around this room, a lot of us are of a certain age. Our kids, admit it, could not afford to live in Mississauga today, could not afford to buy. When I was graduating, my father said you can afford a mortgage that's 3 times your salary. Today, they say it takes 20 years to save money for a down payment, let alone the amount of money you need for a house. And I got to tell you, and you know this because you've been reading the newspapers, the provincial government, the federal government has said that the biggest reason why we have a lack of supply is because city government, city planning take too long. It's red tape, it's regulation, it is zoning rules that are out of date. And I don't think that we can go on the way we are. We need dramatic change. The federal government said that 2 weeks ago in the budget, where the housing affordability was the number one issue. The provincial government has said it on numerous occasions. I don't think Mississauga City Council has woken up to that reality. I think we've got a crime crisis. I personally have been burglarized twice in the last 6 months. Twice in the last 6 months. You've heard about home invasions. You've heard about cars. There's something wrong in Mississauga in regards to that. Taxes have gone up and up and up. And they say it's gone up by 3%, but that doesn't count how your house is inflated, because it's the 3% increase on top of your house price increase. We need a business person that's going to go in and do a zero-based budgeting review of every expenditure. So let's be candid. If the same number of people that come out to vote is either what happened in the last election or 20% turnout the typical by-elections get, one of the people on council now is going to win because they got name awareness, they got the organization, etc. If you think Mississauga is okay, I'm going to lose. If you think Mississauga can have change and it can need strong leadership, then I've got a chance of increasing the turnout, and I think that I've got the skills in business and in politics and in Mississauga society that I could be a pretty good mayor for you. So thank you very much for your attention. Go to briancrombie.ca or check me out every night 6 o'clock on 960 AM. I have the privilege of talking for 50 minutes, so not 3 minutes, but 50 minutes with people after people after people. Last week I interviewed George Tavares, and this week he interviewed me. We have great conversations. Thank you very much. Ryan, it's over to you.
All right, and you get 2 minutes each to address it. I'll leave it up to you to decide who wants to go first, second, or third. Or do you want me to decide?
You decide.
Me decide? Okay. We'll start with the one I love most, me. No, we'll go alphabetically. Let's see, D, D, A, C, C, D, A. So you. Okay?
The system works.
Okay, here's the first question. So in the last census, Mississauga was the only GTA city to decrease in population. A large part of that is due to unaffordable housing. What specific things in your platform will address making housing more affordable in Mississauga? And also please address the shortage of housing for various folks like refugees coming to Mississauga, seniors, and youth.
So I've done numerous different shows. If you're interested at all, go to my website, briancrombie.com, and you can see some of the shows that I've done on Saga 960 on this issue. I do think it is the number one issue, not just in Mississauga, but frankly across the Greater Toronto Area. I think it is, frankly, the problem of our city governance system. We have a planning process where it takes twice as long to get an approval to build something as it does to actually build it. And that is wrong. And I had a guy, a manager of construction, come in for an interview 2 days ago who said that he was trying to build something in Mississauga. He said it's the worst bureaucracy and red tape he's ever seen. It's 11 different committees that have to approve everything on an ongoing basis. What I would do, and Ryan, you probably heard the podcast, I would say, number one, we should reduce the approval time, the review time, not the approval time, by 50%. There's no reason why it has to take so long. It doesn't mean that you approve everything. Things that should get turned down, but you should say no more quickly. And so 50% reduction. Number two, I think that we need supply, bigger supply, and we need some of it to be affordable. What I would do is a 20% increase in density around major transit zones and on major arterials, but half of that increase has to go to affordable. Affordable isn't something to be scared about. Affordable is 80% of market rents. Every architect I've talked to says that above 10 stories, you don't see height. And if you had 10 stories going to 12, and one of those floors was at 80% of market, we'd start to address the issue. And then the third thing that we've got to do, and we've got to admit it, is we need to invest in transit like we've never done before, because we are going to have congestion. The people that say that we can have growth without congestion, South Mississauga, with all due respect, because Stephen is a great guy, but South Mississauga is going to be a disaster when Brightwater and Lakeview open up with 15,000 people on one and 50,000 people on the other. I hate Mississauga Road, here Ontario, here, Dundas, etc. They're going to be disasters. The only way to solve it is transit and a massive increase in our investment in transit. So housing, number one issue, and it is intergenerational inequity. We have robbed our children of the future dreams that we had. And we should look at ourselves and our council in the face and say, we have done wrong. We need to somehow fix this. Otherwise, our kids are going to be living in Alliston before they can afford a house. Thank you. When I moved here 24 years ago, Mississauga was a safe city. You could keep your front door open. We're losing that reputation and that image, and I think that's going to be incredibly damaging, number one, to our lives, but then also to everyone that talked about needing people to move here and businesses to move here such that we keep taxes down. So I think this is a real issue. I think number one, you've got to stop the profit. And Steve mentioned the Port of Montreal. What I would do is I would go to Ottawa and I would demand that the Port of Montreal be stopped for the exporting containers of used cars immediately. And I would not leave Ottawa until they actually did that. I spoke with 2 city councillors in Toronto. They would join me. It is the number one problem. People come from Montreal, gangs come from Montreal, they jump in the cars, they steal the cars, they're in Montreal, in those containers within a couple of hours, and then they're shipped off seas. There's no reason why we have to have containers shipping used cars out of Montreal on a regular basis. Number two, you gotta have a deterrent. And you're right, the bail system is wrong. You are out on bail that night or the next day if you're arrested for break and entry or auto theft in Peel today. And that's wrong. Part of it is our court system, part of it is the bail rules, part of it is the lack of prison space. If you don't have a deterrent, some people are gonna do that. And then I think the third thing, and you're gonna say, Brian, that's a little bit idealistic. But I gotta tell you, last Sunday, Fareed Zakari on CNN had a show that said the problem is our society today has a real problem. We are not a community anymore. And I think this is a real problem in Mississauga. The number one way, and Jane Jacobs talked about this in her book in 1960-something rather, about the life and death of great American cities. She talked about its eyes on the street. You gotta have neighbors where people watch out for neighbors. Not snitch lines where you get $10,000, but just eyes on the street. You gotta have communities. I think our partisan politics that has become so polarized, our communities that aren't there, and frankly, I think some of the isolation that we had because of the pandemic, where we didn't interact as much, and mental health went up and isolation went up. We are not a community anymore, and so one of the things that I think the mayor has to do is really develop a better, stronger community, because that's when you watch out for your neighbors. And I think it sounds idealistic, but it's the truth.
Thank you very much.
Thanks again for coming tonight and to listening. First of all, quick retort. The $10,000 for crime information, I think, is a bad idea. And let me give you 2 reasons why. Number one, I have talked to the police about this. As I mentioned, I've been burglarized twice in the last 6 months. What the police say is they think honest citizens will provide the information anyway, and they don't want anyone to wait till they get the 10,000 bucks. Number two, what they say is take a look at blood donor clinics. Soon as, and the United States has this, as soon as you actually pay people to donate blood, no one will donate blood as a good citizen anymore. They'll wait until they get paid for it. So to start down the road of paying people all the time for providing information on crime is the road down a slippery slope to you don't become a good citizen, you only are a good citizen when you get paid for it. And I think that is a disaster. Number two, I think it is terrible that sitting councillors can run for mayor at the same time as they stay as a city councillor. If you've seen the nomination rules, if you're an MP, if you're an MPP, if you're a employee of the city, if you're a city councillor in any other jurisdiction, you're not allowed to run. In a general election, if you're a city councillor, you can't run for mayor and run for city council at the same time. The only time that this happens is in a by-election. And I don't think this comment about 4 people running and severance for 4 people is reality, because the reality is some of these people that are running wouldn't run if they knew that they would risk their jobs. They have an unfair advantage, and frankly, Ryan, the fact that you only has 2 people to ask a question is undemocratic. You should have shared it around. There are debates coming up where only the people that are city councilors get to run. That's undemocratic. I think going back to the problems that we've got, if you think that Mississauga is fine right now, one of the existing city councillors is going to win, because it's the old adage of rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. I think we've got 4 crises in Mississauga today. And if you want to change Mississauga, you're going to have to get a new leader. Amen. If you want to have the same Mississauga as we've had before, the existing city councillors are good, and they'll give you the same Mississauga that we currently have. Housing crisis, tax problems, crime problems, etc. You want change? Vote for some of these good people that have put themselves forward to say we need new leadership in Mississauga.